You are watching ColdFusion TV.
Hi, welcome to another ColdFusion video. Who can dislike Sony's PlayStation? It was a machine that brought us countless hours of fun and was ahead of its time by ushering in the 3D era of console gaming. But where did the PlayStation come from, and what's the story behind it? For the first time on ColdFusion, this episode will be centered around Sony. Let's take a look at the story. The PlayStation all started with one man, Ken Kutaragi, a Sony engineer. Ken first became interested in working in video games in 1988 after seeing his daughter play games on Nintendo's Entertainment System console. Full of inspiration, Ken approached Nintendo to create a CD-ROM drive for their upcoming Super Nintendo system. The new drive was to be called the Super Disc. Nintendo agreed, and Ken brought together a research and development team within Sony in 1990. The following year at CES, Sony would show off their Nintendo-compatible Super Disc, now codenamed the PlayStation. It was a multimedia powerhouse, capable of not only playing Nintendo games, but also audio CDs, data CDs, and video CDs, a pretty big deal for 1991. Unfortunately for Sony, disaster was around the corner. Just one day later, Nintendo would surprise everyone with an announcement. They announced that they would break their partnership with Sony in making the Super Disc and partner with Philips instead to work towards the same technology. This made the president of Sony, Norio Oga, furious. Even more unfortunately for Ken, other employees within Sony thought that the idea of entering the video game industry was a bad idea, and they let him know about it. In 1992, a meeting was held within Sony to discuss the future of the PlayStation. The concept was very close to being scrapped, but Ken reminded Norio of how Nintendo had dishonored the company while the world was watching. Norio then agreed to let the PlayStation project continue. However, the older generation of Sony executives was still very unhappy about Sony entering the video game industry. This forced Ken and his newly formed team to leave Sony's main headquarters and continue work at Sony Music headquarters. With the groundwork for the new project sorted, Sony had a choice to make. Should this console focus on 2D graphics or 3D polygon graphics? While the team were contemplating this dilemma, a new gaming phenomena was taking over Japanese arcades. It was Virtua Fighter, a 3D polygon game by Sega. The Sony team now had their answer. Not long after this, in 1993, Sony Computer Entertainment would be formed out of the CEO of Sony Music and Ken Kutaragi himself. The involvement of Sony Music was actually a blessing in disguise, as the marketing, creative talent, and manufacturing of the discs could be done in-house, saving both time and money. The following year, in a Tokyo hotel, Sony would showcase some technical demos. The technical demos showed in the hotel session were good enough to open the floodgates for keen developers. Big players like Electronic Arts and Namco were now interested. So what caused all of this interest? The PlayStation had solid 3D graphics and, most importantly, CD capabilities, which were a major step above present-day cartridges. In December of 1994, the PlayStation was let loose in Japan. Its main competition was the Sega Saturn.
Never been a game that's allowed you to fly, fluid and free, in real-time 3D. Never, not anywhere. But especially not on that other system. Simply because, with only one processor, it doesn't have the power to do it. Fly, plaything, fly. You're not ready.
Sales for both consoles started off strong, but despite this, the Sega Saturn ultimately proved to be a failure. The main reasons being that the PlayStation sold for cheaper and was also much easier to develop for, meaning many more games than the Sega Saturn. A PlayStation worldwide release would occur in 1995, and popularity soared. The PlayStation would be the first console to cross 100 million sales, and would go on to become an iconic consumer product of the 1990s. Not even the Nintendo 64 could dampen the success of the Sony machine. The PlayStation Successor, the cleverly titled PlayStation 2, would be the best-selling home console of all time, selling 155 million units. As time went on, the PlayStation 3 and 4 would both be smash hits, solidifying Sony as a leader in living room entertainment. Being rejected by Nintendo turned out to be one of the greatest things that happened to Sony. Alright, so before we wrap up the video, for all you knowledge seekers out there, let's take a look at 5 fun facts about the original PlayStation.
Number 5.
Have you ever wondered what the square, triangle, O and X actually mean? Well, let's take a look. The triangle represents the player's point of view, the square represents a piece of paper for menus and in-game documents, the O means yes and the X means no. But funnily enough, in Western markets, this was reversed.
Number 4.
The first major Sony developed game was Motor Toon Grand Prix by a small team called Polys. Polys would go on to become Polyphony Digital, the creator of the legendary Gran Turismo series.
Number 3.
In 1994, Namco developed a test board called System 11 to simulate the PlayStation 1 during development. The first major title to use this board was a test program for a fighting game to experiment with textures on 3D characters. This experiment would eventually turn into one of the most legendary games of all time, Tekken, a key PlayStation hit.
Number 2.
The best-selling game on the PlayStation was Gran Turismo, shifting over 10 million units. This is followed by Final Fantasy VII, Resident Evil, Tekken 3, Tomb Raider, and Crash Bandicoot.
Number 1.
So what about Ken Kutaragi? Today he serves as the president and CEO of an internet service company called Cyber AI Entertainment Inc. Last year, Ken received a Lifetime Achievement Award at the 2014 Game Developer Conference. Nice to see that he's still doing stuff. Good on you, Ken. It's pretty cool that even though people hated Ken's idea and another company betrayed him, he still stuck with it, forever changing the course of gaming history. Anyway, that was just a bit of technology history for you. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you're new. Feel free to leave a comment of your favourite PlayStation memory. This has been Dagogo, you've been watching ColdFusion, and I'll see you again soon for the next video.
ColdFusion. It's new thinking.